Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 111. Exciting time here at the Back of the Range. I've recorded 4 episodes in the last week. All 4 of these guests come from completely different backgrounds in the game of golf and have distinctly different careers. Spoke with a member of Golf Channel's team that covers college golf, a head coach of one of the hottest men's college golf teams, one of the best mid-amateurs in the country that has won both the Coleman at Seminole and the Crump Cup at Pine Valley. And if those 3 aren't enough, I just wrapped up an interview with a 3-time participant in the PGA Championship that is not a member of the PGA Tour. So, lots of great episodes coming your way. My first big announcement of 2020 is that next week, I'm heading down to Mayakoba to spend some time at the Latin America Amateur Championship. Living in South Florida, it's a quick flight down to Cancun, actually Playa del Carmen to be more specific. I'll be checking out some of the participants that'll be vying for the title and that coveted invite to the 2020 Masters. So, I've never been to Mexico, never been to this tournament, so I'll be sharing some photos and videos, perhaps some interviews while I'm there, and I'll also be working on writing a story about a few of the participants there that I've actually played some golf with in the past. So, really excited about that. I'll share as much as I can with you while I'm down there. You want to know where I'm going to be sharing it? Yes, I'll be sharing it on social media. So make sure that you're following on Instagram. The handle is the Back of the Range Podcast. We're on Facebook and Twitter as well. I know I say it all the time, but if you're looking for the links to all these places, the best place to go is the website, thebackoftherange.com. That's also where you'll find every episode that I've ever done. If you need to get caught up, if you want to see who I've talked to in the past, best place to go. Go to the website, thebackoftherange.com. On to this week's episode. Our guest is the #1 ranked collegiate player in the country, standout senior from BYU, Peter Kuest. I had a great time getting to know Peter. I know you will as well. Just a really down-to-earth guy that works really hard in his game and loves to compete. He will easily go down as one of the greatest players in the history of the BYU Golf Program that has produced players like Mike Weir, Daniel Summerhays, and Johnny Miller. He's an All-American that picked up 3 wins this past fall and is looking forward to closing out his incredible career before turning pro. So let's get started. Peter, welcome to the Back of the Range. How are you, sir?
Ben, doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you are the first interview I have conducted post-President's Cup, so you are the beneficiary of having a whole lot of information to dissect and comment on about the President's Cup. Normally we
perfect.
don't. I know. I got the right guy. Perfect. So before we talk about your incredible college career at BYU, what you're doing after graduation, and we'll probably hit on a couple other things. With the time difference, now I'm actually just now recovering from sleep deprivation because here on the East Coast, I'm staying up till like 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning to watch the President's Cup in Australia. Did you watch a lot of the President's Cup?
No, I didn't actually. I watched a little bit here and there, kind of just when they started teeing off and stuff like that. And then after that, I just looked in the morning because I either had to get up and wanted to go skiing the next day or I'd study for finals. So I was a little busy.
Okay, so you have your priorities focused on what you're doing, but obviously you've seen some of the things that occurred, and we'll see how far we go with this line of questioning. But I guess, a lot is made out of Patrick Reed, and a lot is made out of maybe like team chemistry suffering due to the distractions of what he was dealing with at the Hero World Challenge. Obviously, this team succeeded in light of, media attention and controversy, but how important is it to have a solid team for you to succeed at BYU? Talk to me a little bit about kind of your team dynamic, what it is that you do to maintain a solid team base for success out there at BYU.
Yeah, I mean, having a good team and a solid team is something you always want. I mean, you want to have 6-7 guys who are always competing and, have 6-7 guys that could go out and win a golf tournament. when you tee it up, and that just brings a whole nother level of competition to it all. And it gets guys fired up to try to beat one another. And it helps team chemistry because we're all rooting for each other to play well. And, you know, when one of the guys goes out and shoots a low round, you're rooting for him. And then the next day you try to go beat him. So it's just a lot of fun.
Not to put any one of your teammates under, not to throw a teammate under the bus here, but are there times where you have to kind of talk to a teammate, whether it's you being an upperclassman talking to a freshman saying, hey, that's not going to work here. That's not going to work with our program. Or maybe you having a freshman moment back in the day, walking in and one of your seniors saying to you like, hey, you know, now you're in college. This is a different thing than just playing on your own or playing junior golf or even on a high school team. Maybe can you think of just an example of a time when you had to maybe pull someone in or someone had to pull you in and say, hey, here's how we do this here?
No, I've actually never really had to do that or experience that, which has been great. I mean, I have respect for all my teammates.
Yeah.
I had Cole Ponich reach out to me for help after season, and you know that was really cool. And just help them that way. I'm not a real vocal person.
Okay.
I'm not going to go around, you know, kind of telling people, you know, what to do or what they should do. But I try to lead by example. And hopefully people, you know, can follow.
Clearly it's done well. You guys are I believe right around now, you're about the 4th or 5th ranked team in the nation. And, you know, you're behind teams like Oklahoma and Texas Tech from, you know, universities at different areas in the country that have probably a lot more warmer weather than you're having in Provo, Utah for the most part. Let's backtrack a little bit. I want to learn a little bit more. I want our listeners to learn a little bit more about how you got into the game. I know that golf is not the only sport you played. You just mentioned skiing. We're gonna get back to that one. I'm curious how Coach Brockbank and everyone else feels having their star senior hitting the slopes in the off season. But we can edit that out for a fee. But how did you get into golf? And I always like identifying these paths with collegiate players, whether they only played golf, played other sports, they had, you know, the country club upbringing, or they worked at a public course. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the game of golf.
Yeah, so I mean, I was probably, you know, 7 or 8 when I'd mess around at the driving range. We'd go down to Palm Springs for Rug Doctor would have these corporate outings, and so my mom worked for them, and so we'd go to Palm Springs, and I'd just go out to the driving range with my brother, and I would just beat driver for 3 or 4 hours and then go hang out at the pool.
Hey, there you
go. So that kind of started it. And then I played baseball and soccer up till high school, but I kind of got more into golf in junior high. I was on the team there. And then 8th grade, I broke my elbow pitching, and golf was the first sport I could go out and play after my surgery. So I played that for 3 months in the summer, and then came back, played fall ball, baseball, and then kind of decided, you know, I like golf a lot. And then spring of my freshman year, played on the team, and then from there it just kind of took off.
Now, did you break your elbow pitching because you were that kid that knew how to throw a curveball that just tore your elbow up, or was this just like a freak accident? Because that was actually me when I was in that 12 or 13 age range. I was the kid that threw the curveball, and then that was pretty much the end of it.
Yeah, I was a late bloomer, so my body really wasn't developed yet, and when you go from little league to the big mound, you're trying to throw as hard as you can, and you know, probably didn't rest as much as I should in little league, but you're not really thinking about that. No. You're just going out throwing. You don't really care.
Yeah, of course.
You're just trying to win games and have fun. But yeah, I definitely just overthrew too much, and yeah, I did throw the curveball.
There you go.
But it was a fastball that broke my arm, so okay. It wasn't a curveball.
All right, well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So like other players I've talked to, other amateurs, you know, they go through the AJGA route and they're, you know, playing the circuit, and it becomes a very serious thing relatively quickly. It sounds like that wasn't necessarily the case for you, was it?
No, not at all. I didn't play in an AJJ till it was, I think, February of my junior year.
Oh wow!
And so I was late to it. I just played a bunch of like JJNC or NCGA stuff up in NorCal.
Yeah.
yeah, I was pretty late to it. Playing one AJGA, played 3 that next summer, and then 1, and then got into a couple invitationals. So it wasn't like I've been playing it since I was 12, like some of the guys out there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I like I said, it's always interesting to identify the different paths. I was actually just at the AJGA Tournament of Champions down here in Palm Beach Gardens, and I know a lot of juniors that play the circuit a lot. What was maybe your reaction when you get into that AJGA circuit, so to speak, or you start playing a couple of those events and you start recognizing players that this is what they've been doing for 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years? Do you feel like, okay, they have a leg up, or do you just kind of feel like, well, they're just kind of they've gone a different way, I'm doing fine with the way I've gone? Or, did you really give much thought to it?
No, I didn't really give much thought to it. I mean, growing up, for the most part, I was always a smaller kid. And so my dad always taught me that it doesn't matter who you go out and play and compete against, like, their crap stinks too. There's no reason they can't lose. And so I've always had that mindset. And so even going to those invitationals and AJJs, I was like, why not me? I work hard at my game, and, it doesn't really matter to me who's in the tournament. I'm still going to try and go win.
Yeah.
And so I think that really helped me kind of focus on what I wanted to do and not get caught up in, who's in the tournament and what they've done and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know you're recruited by Nebraska, recruited by, CU Boulder. You ended up going to BYU, and, a lot of questions I want to ask you. And one of the questions is, what is maybe the biggest misconception about BYU? Maybe what are some of the things that maybe friends or competitors from other teams will ask you or assume about BYU and playing there?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about the church and BYU and kind of what goes on. And, they think, oh, you have to go out on a mission if you go to BYU, or you have to be Mormon if you go to BYU. But, none of that's true. You don't have to be a member of the church. You don't have to go on a mission. It's a great spot to go. I mean, there's a lot of people out here who really care about you and what you do. If you're in the church or not in the church, they just want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
And so it's been a really cool experience at BYU.
When you were recruited to go to BYU, did you have those misconceptions? And then when you learned more about the university, how easy was it to make that transition to the university?
It was definitely pretty tough, kind of making the transition and kind of getting used to everything. It's a different culture here. It's a little slower pace. There's not much of a social life. So you kind of had to make do with what you had, and
sure.
Find ways to stay busy and stuff like that. And so, but I had one of my best friends, he's at BYU right now. And so growing up with him through high school, he kind of taught me about the church and what it's about. And so I was kind of used to, their beliefs and kind of the rules at BYU. So, it was an easier way to get acclimated to it.
Sure. I want to ask you, okay, so your individual, we're looking at your accomplishments at BYU. I sounds like you're an incredibly humble guy, but I hate to break it to you. You're probably going to go down as one of the best golfers in the history of BYU. And there are names like Mike Weir and Johnny Miller and, Clay Ogden. And there are just, countless, there's a handful of Summer Hays that have been rolled in there, for the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are just, the pedigree at BYU. You own right now the best individual season scoring average in last season, which was 69.79, which is just frankly, that's a little insane. But I guess one of the things I want to talk to you about is you have, I think, 10 wins in your career there. You're a second team All-American. How do you transition that, I guess, to individual amateur events? Because a lot of your success that I've seen is at collegiate events. I know you've played great at the Sahali the last couple of years, but on the national level, whether it be like a Son of Hannah or a U.S. Amateur, what is the transition from what you're doing in college to doing it during the summer where it's really all about you and has nothing to do with the team environment?
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm still trying to figure out a little bit.
Okay.
It's I've always been like a team guy and a team player, and so I've just grown up with the team aspect and trying to put something for the team. And then But yeah, I've just been trying to just kind of manage my time better over summer tournaments, because you'll go on 3-4 week stretches of just playing golf and traveling. Whereas in college, you play, 2 or 3 days, and then you take a week or two off, and then you go play another event. And so I've just learned to kind of manage my time a little bit better, and rest and manage my game a little bit more. And I think that's a big help in having, success individually.
Because this is, I'm assuming your goal after graduation is to turn professional. So this is something you're continuously working on, because then you'll definitely really be out on your own when you turn professional.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I'm excited for it. I want to get after it and, just keep trying to learn more and more about the game.
Well, you're winning. It was funny. I read a quote that your coach Bruce Bachbank made a comment. He says, it's something you have to kind of figure out on your own, and he was just kind of referring to winning. As I said, you've won 10 times in your college career. Coach Brockbank has worked with over, I think you're his 20th All-American. He's won the Utah State Amateur twice. And I'm curious, was there a moment when maybe, okay, this is the right mindset I need to have to win golf tournaments? Because I'm just curious, was that always with you, or was there maybe a pivotal moment in your college career where you said, oh, okay, this works. This is how I need to kind of prepare to win?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of all went into kind of my preparation leading up to events, and the whole mindset behind wanting to win. You're not focused on anyone else or what anyone else is doing. You're focused on your game and what you need to go out to do, and you just trust that you're prepared and that you can hit any shot out there and you can go out and win. And all you're trying to do is win. You're not trying to, finish top 10. I just want to win, and that's the mindset I've had, and it's worked.
Can you see other players, whether, when you're competing in a final group or any sort of pairing that you're in, when you're playing with competitors from other universities, can you see that they are not on that same page that you're on? And I don't mean like who hits it further and who has a better short game. I mean, when you're walking next to a guy and you're just reading body language, can you tell when a guy is just not really ready to win?
Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can look into someone's eyes and you can kind of think to yourself, this guy might not have it.
Right.
It's just, and it's not being like disrespectful
to
him or anything. It's just like, it's something that you're kind of like, all right, watch this. I'm going to, kick your ass.
Right.
Kind of thing. And I mean, my dad's instilled that in me, in every sport I've played, and, transferring that to golf, I think has helped me have that competitive edge.
Yeah. You're as we said earlier, you've played other sports, you had other interests. You played baseball. I know you're into skiing now, or been in skiing for a while, and you were playing golf. You're casually playing, but at some point, I'm sure you had to make a decision to really get serious about it. Can you tell me was there any moment that really kind of triggered in you, okay, I need to take this seriously. I have something here. I need to work at it.
It was probably the next day after my dad put the painting clothes on my bed.
All right. So back up, because, all right. So explain to me this story of coming home and seeing painting clothes on your bed, because that needs a little context. Explain that one.
Yeah. So it was, I think it was summer of either my sophomore or my junior year. I think it was my sophomore year, going into my junior year. And, I'd played a bunch of like junior tournaments in NorCal and stuff like that. And I wasn't playing great, and I was just kind of messing around, hanging out with friends over summer, going to the lake, doing whatever, sitting by the pool. And he's getting up at 4:30 every morning, going to work, and, putting all this money into it. And, I was out at the course for one day, played like 9 holes, came back, and I get home and there's these painter pants and a Sherwin-Williams shirt sitting on my bed. I was kind of confused by it. So I walk out to the living room and he's sitting on the couch. I go, "Hey, Dad, what's this?" And he goes, "Well, you can make a choice. You can keep playing golf and I'll pay for it, or you can come to work with me." And it was like from then on, it was, blood, sweat, and tears, putting in 12, 13-hour days out of the course. And so that was, the biggest influence on my life to work hard at what I do and to realize that I had something that I could do. And he would support me through it all. Sure.
Well, I had a very similar upbringing there where, family members worked on a farm. So you can't be, farmers, painters, anything like, construction, you can't be lazy around. Yeah. You just can't, laziness isn't going to work. So, but I got to ask, there's no way that you didn't at least at some point help your dad out on a painting job. What is the worst painting job he made you do? Yeah. This is easy, isn't it?
This is easy. This would be, this is actually probably this is probably after, let's see, sophomore year.
Sophomore year, college? College?
Yeah.
In college. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. And so he needed help on a job, and me and my brother, we went and helped him, and it was, stripping wallpaper off walls.
Oh, I've done that.
In the middle of summer, and there's no AC in the room. It's 110 outside, and it's probably 115 in the room that's cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And you're spraying this solvent on the wallpaper, and then you have to go up onto the ceiling and spray it off, and then you got to peel it all off, and the stuff just sticks to you, and it sticks to your skin. And if you let it dry,
and you got the scraper, right? You got the scraper, and
yeah. Well, you got the scraper, and then you're trying to scrape off these big long pieces, and then peel off big pieces too.
Yeah.
And then that was just brutal because the pieces would get stuck to your skin if you didn't wear like a sweatshirt or anything, and then you got to rip it off if it dries, and that rips your hair out. And it was brutal, and the smell of the solvent, it was just bad. Right. So that was probably the worst, experience on the job I've had with him.
So you're like you're one of the best collegiate golfers in the country, and I mean, victories and all these accolades and awards, and you're doing that in the summer, scraping it off, and that had to be just extra motivation of like, yep, not what I want to really be doing anymore. Can't wait to get back and hit balls and work on this even more. So if your handicap right now is about a scratch or a +1 or somewhere in that neighborhood, what's your handicap as far as working on a paint site? I mean, are you like a 20 handicap? I mean, are you even worth having around, or like how bad is it?
No, I'm pretty bad. I'm usually the guy that gets the buckets out of the back of the truck or the paint rollers, and then scrapes off wallpaper. I'm not the guy that's doing the painting or the sanding.
Got it.
That's not me at all.
You're taking lunch orders. What can I do? Got it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome, because I think that's great. I mean, you're nationally ranked amateur and collegiate player, and going to go down, like I said, one of the best players in BYU history. And hey, these are the things that you learn before you go make it a living.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to ask you also, elevation in Provo is 4,500 feet. Your hometown of Fresno is 300 feet. Obviously, the national championship is what you guys are striving for. That's in Arizona this year. Last year's in Arkansas, but this year it's in Arizona. How do you adjust elevation? Because it's great to hit 400-yard drives, but that doesn't really help when you got to flight a wedge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's definitely been. The first 2 years year and a half were pretty difficult to figure out, like wedges and stuff like that, distances. But it's been easier to kind of change and adjust to different elevations growing up at sea level, and then, playing all the courses on the coast, knowing how far the ball flies there. And I mean, with my irons, I've hit, I've had the same kind of yardages for, since probably my senior year. And then coming up here and playing, just kind of adjusting that. So I kind of have an idea of what elevation does what to the ball and how far it goes and how much to take off or to add. And, what spin does to the wedges at certain elevations. And so you try to figure out, sometimes you can figure it out, sometimes you don't. For me, it seems like it's more of a feel thing. Other guys are more just straight up numbers. But it's been difficult to figure out for sure.
Well, I would imagine it just makes you a little bit more of a complete player where you're thinking a little bit more instead of just, okay, here's my number, here's my lie, here's the wind, and go.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to backtrack just a little bit. For earlier this year, you got to play the BallMarker Cup. You were there were 6 automatics in that team. You were the top-ranked collegiate player on the men's side. Got an automatic pick. I know there's a lot of guys on that team that were previous guests here on the podcast, whether it be, I don't know if you're John Augenstein's doppelganger or he is yours, but I'm sure you have heard that you two look alike. And then, of course, you play together in the same, you played together as partners in the BallMarker Cup. Has that ever occurred, by the way? I'm just grasping at straws here, but has that ever occurred when people get you and Augenstein confused?
No, I've actually never heard anyone like compare us saying we look similar, but now that you say that, I do see that.
Okay. So you mentioned you like the team event. Maybe just if you can briefly, what are maybe some of the things, or what's one thing that maybe people would be surprised to hear as far as what the team environment's like? Because I know it's U.S. and international, but a lot of the international players go to school in the United States. So what are some of the off-the-course things that you guys got to be able to do at the BallMarker Cup?
I mean, we got to hang out with some of the international kids, too. We got to know them.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you want to win, you want to beat them on the course. But once you leave the course, you're friendly, you're cordial, you're, trying to make connections and stuff like that. And so that was the coolest part of it, because I thought it was going to be a little hostile, maybe in the hotel rooms or stuff like that amongst the teams. But no, it was pretty cool. It was a cool experience.
What's maybe the one country you learned about from one of the international players that you're like, yeah, I got to go check that place out?
I don't know. When I played Matthias in the final match,
yeah,
he's from Germany, and so my grandparents are from Germany, and so we just got talking about that. And so I told him I want to go over there one day, and he's like, yeah, just let me know when you're over there, and hopefully I'm there too, and I'll show you around. And so that was pretty cool. I just got to make a trip over there sometime.
Have you been overseas at all?
No, I haven't. I've actually never left the country.
Okay.
No reason to. It's the greatest place on earth.
Okay. Well, there's Ryder Cups and President's Cups and all sorts of things that are outside the United States. I mean, I agree with you. I'm a big fan. But I'm just saying there is a whole other world out there. There's a lot of and Sweden, Norway, lots of skiing. Lots of skiing there.
Yeah, I need to take a ski trip. I need to go, Canada or go overseas and take a ski trip or something. That'd be sweet.
So if you had to pick a vacation, I'm assuming where you're going out of the country, is it a ski trip or is it a golf trip?
Ski trip, for sure.
All right. So so how serious is this ski, this addiction to skiing? Like, is it pretty full blown, or is it just a casual thing, or are you just really into skiing?
Kind of a little bit of everything.
Okay.
I mean, I started skiing when I was probably 3 or 4.
Oh, okay.
And so I've just done that my whole life. And so that's kind of been my off season is, I'd go, ski, from end of November through January, February, and then golf starts back up. And so it's been good. And I love it. I love getting out on the slopes and you're just free. And, it's just a lot of fun.
Okay, so let me go back to the reference to your handicap on a painting site. So what's your handicap on the slopes?
I don't know. I'm probably right around scratch, I'd say.
Okay.
Maybe a +1 or 2.
There you go.
I mean, I can handle myself on, the Black Diamond slopes.
Oh God. All right. Well, just yeah. Well, enjoy that. That makes me nervous because I went skiing a couple of years ago and I was like, I do not belong up here. That was I was like, real nice up here. It's real pretty, but I am just one moment away from just breaking a leg. So I think a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are amateurs. They're always trying to improve their game. I always like to kind of grab something from my guest and see if they can impart a little bit of advice or tips that's helped them. How do you maintain mental focus when things maybe aren't going well? You know, you're coming off of a 3-putt, or you start off bogey. If you can remember going bogey at some point, I'm just kidding. But how do you do that? Because I know when things are great, everything's fine. Like I'm making putts and I'm hitting the ball in the fairway, and it's no stress, and that's great. But what do you do when things are not going well?
I really try to focus on my breathing, taking big, deep, rhythmic breaths. And I'm an exercise and wellness major, so I've been able to learn about oxygen intake and how it affects the brain and all that.
Okay.
And, when you get under tense situations, you tend to take shallower breaths, and that tends to tighten up muscles and tense everything up, and you aren't able to perform to the level you want to perform. And it limits the amount of oxygen going to your brain, so you can't think as much, or you're thinking too much. When you're able to take big, deep breaths and kind of just focus on that, you're able to clear your mind of, all those, bad negative thoughts, and, refocus to what you want to do. And it kind of clears up the picture of everything through doing that.
Okay.
And a lot of that comes with like meditation or just reading, or, doing different types of like focus activities, visualization, all that stuff. But for me, it's just been, after a bad hole, when I can refocus my breathing and kind of get back into the rhythm of things, then I can put it behind me and move on.
That sounds like pretty good advice. You mentioned you're majoring in exercise and wellness. I have to ask, and I don't know why I have this information, but I do. But please explain to listeners what cougar tails are.
Oh, cougar tails are like big maple bars.
Okay, what's a maple bar?
A maple bar is just a donut, and then you got whatever maple frosting or whatever it is, on top of it.
Sure.
It's just like one of those like kind of hot dog bun donuts, maple frosting. It's like, I can't remember how long it is. It's probably like 2.5, 3 feet long.
Okay.
They're all right. I've had like a bite of one. They're okay.
Okay, because apparently they're like the number one selling specialty concession around all collegiate sports. Like that's the number one thing that is apparently in the country.
Yeah, I mean, you go to a basketball game, a football game, you see kids just walking around with 2 or 3 of them in their hands, just like trying to get back to the seats.
Okay.
It's like, oh man.
All right, I just was curious if you're aware of those, because I've seen they look pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to get you out of here on kind of one last question. You've mentioned, I think in previous interviews, you said that just the whole college experience at BYU, it's something that you're never going to be able to go back to. The PGA Tour isn't going to go anywhere. So I don't know when you gave that quote or when you said that, but has anything changed with your mindset now that you're coming to the end of your career at BYU, about to turn pro? Kind of what are your thoughts on maybe, the youth movement, so to speak, on the PGA Tour, whether it's Wolf and Hovland and Morikawa and guys like that? What are you most looking forward to? What are your thoughts going into it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm real excited to try to get out there and try to win. I don't want to just get my card for the next year if I'm able to get out there and have starts like those guys. I want to go out and I want to win. And it'll just be really exciting to, travel around and see everyone and, play with guys you watch on TV. And, that'd be a dream come true. And so I'm real excited, for the next chapter of my life, and, hopefully it all goes well.
If you're able to do half of what you did or what you've done at BYU when you turn pro, I think you'll be just fine. As I said, your 10 victories. You're heading over to the national champion, or you're heading towards the national championship, obviously at Greyhawk. Peter, I wish you the best. Thanks for joining me here at the back of the range, and enjoy the holidays.
Thank you. Thank you too, and thank you for this incredible opportunity. It's real cool.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Peter Kuest from BYU for joining us this week. All the best to him and BYU's team as they push forward this spring towards the national championship. Don't forget, I am heading down to Mayakoba, the Latin America Amateur Championship next week. So make sure you're following on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You'll get all the latest photos and videos while I'm down there. Don't worry, I'll post an episode before I get on a plane. So we'll see you again next week for another episode here at the Back of the Range.